proud of that. Right now happens to be one of those times. We're kind of kicking off this seminar, if you will, about new rules. Try to come to some standard interpretation as we move forward, just like everything else that we talk about in this crazy avocation that we've chosen as referees. If we can stay consistent with our application throughout any game, you're golden. I don't think there's a coach in the world that wouldn't rather have you be maybe not so sure of yourself, maybe not so expertise, if you will, but at least you're consistent. They can adjust, they can tell their players what to expect. It's when we get referees that are all over the board and undecisive themselves that we run into trouble. So hopefully tonight, some of this will make sense to you. You can leave the room, collaborate with your colleagues when you have games, and maybe have a sense of what the direction that you'll take in applying some of these new rules. We've sort of overreacted, I think, to this whole new rule thing. So much of this stuff is simply a changing in the wording, a little bit of verbiage, moving some sections in the rule book around to reinforce what we've already tried to do the past 8, 10, 12 years. When I was refereeing, we went through a couple of huge rule changes, and it took a good 3 to 6 months for the TWPC, the FINA group that hands these rules down to all the federations in the world, as to what they really meant. Oh darn, you mean we took all the impeding fouls and took them out of ordinary and put them in exclusions? Well, that's not really what we meant. There are still ordinary fouls, that sort of stuff. So with these changes, try not to get too literal to the letter of the law. Listen to what we talk about tonight. I hope to encourage some dialogue with you. Some of you have been out there. I know that Southern Pacific Zone in particular has instituted these, quote, new rules since last December. Love to hear your stories, love to hear your experiences, and maybe you can help us all come to some sort of dialogue to help us walk out of this room with some consistency and some standardization in what we do. Fair enough? Shall we? Well, first off, my friend Mr. Ortega, Mr. Reddy, Ms. Aronson, the Southern Pacific Zone head honchos for referee business. I want to thank them tremendously for setting this up, and you people that are listening to me, looking at your computer, they made it possible for you to listen in. But we have you muted, so I can't hear you. You just have to listen to me. We will take breaks and have questions after a certain amount of slides, stuff that we talked about, because I know you're dying to ask probably lots of stuff. I hope that I have answers for you. My knowledge is based on conversations with referees that are working internationally in this game with national team coaches around the world, what they've seen, what they've come to expect, and what they're looking forward to. We're pretty darn fortunate tonight to have a couple of referees in the room, Stephen Ronsard and Amber Drury, 2 of our FINA referees, who have actually participated in a couple of tournaments under these rules that we hosted here, Holiday Cup last December. So I'll look forward to their input. It should be invaluable as well. I told you you'd be on the spot. Just an outline of the stuff that we'll talk about. Some of these affect us directly, some do not, but this is an overview of the things that have changed. Roster restrictions has changed. The way that we apply timeouts has changed. Overtime is different. Free throws, direct shots has changed pretty drastically. Wasting time, those of you that have been around as long as I have, we're back to where we were 8 years ago. Now stalling is an ordinary foul, just what we needed. Simulation, that kind of intrigues me, how simulation can be a foul in a game that's 90% simulation to begin with. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. The whole big exclusions in transition. Counterattack. Transition's a fancy name for counterattack, so when I use that word, think about a team moving from defense to offense. Impeding and 2-hand fouls is exclusions, stuff that should have been exclusions forever, hold sink, hold back. Now the language is being cleared up in an effort to make the game more fluid, more movement on part of the offense, and a whole lot less violence. Double exclusions, there's some things that have changed in the application of that. Whole different process for you as a referee, how you administer and signal exclusions inside the 5-meter area, especially away from the ball. An added penalty for delay, which is just a real simple change in wording, and the advantage rule that's confused us forever, but it has gotten even, not more confusing, actually a little clearer when we get to that. Any questions as we go forward? Perfect. Okay. This is just a sort of a disclaimer, if you will, that a lot of these rules that are in the FINA rule book that we pattern our USA water polo playing rules after are going to be modified for competition within the United States. Timeouts, roster restrictions, that sort of stuff will not be adhered to. Will allow people to change caps. You can have more than 13 players, that sort of stuff. We'll kind of gloss over those when we get to it. And then near the end of the presentation, we'll talk about some of the major changes that our national team coaches and our administrative people are looking at for age group competition, 14 and under in the United States. We try to, in the presentation, indicate those that will not be adhered to by the letter of the law, that will in fact be modified for USA water polo. First one, roster restrictions, that it says right down there at the bottom. No such limitations will be enforced. So you can switch caps, you can have a number 1 goalie. Goalies have to wear 1 or 13 still, that's never changed. But I can change my 6th field player for a number 1 if they get hurt or injured or whatever. None of that has changed. Check with the tournament host before you go. This will not change in our conduct of championships that governs National Junior Olympic competition either. Okay. Timeouts. You thought you got behind schedule before? Wait until you get to a tournament where they do this. Instead of 3 timeouts per game, right, 1 of which may only be used in extra time, well, we don't have extra time anymore. So now we have 1 timeout per period. And you know those coaches out there, they're going to use them. 10 seconds left in the quarter, if they got a timeout, they're going to use it. Most of the tournaments I think that we're playing now, and correct me if I'm wrong, are either going to 1 or 2 or no timeouts. And under the sanction process, a tournament host is more than welcome to modify that timeout rule however they want. But, so you know the rule, and I'm not sure where this is going to sit in our conduct of championships, but they are allowed 1 timeout per period. If you don't use it, you lose it. And you can't carry all 4 over to the 4th period. These last 2 points, have you taken the rules test yet? If you have, the most common missed questions have to do with timeouts. Pretty clear and spelled out now in the rule book. If I call a timeout when neither team has the ball, I'm host. If I don't have the ball, regardless, if the other team has it or if nobody has it, it's a penalty shot to the offended team and I lose a timeout. It's a little bit uncertain as to what happens if I've already used my timeout legitimately in that period. We'll worry about that bridge when we cross it. Right now, I can't tell you, but you do lose a timeout and the other team gets a penalty. If I call a timeout and I have the ball, but I'm out of timeouts, what happens there? Turnover. Other team gets the ball. That's easy. Okay? Saw a hand up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was looking for that in the rule book where it states that the team loses a timeout. I couldn't locate it.
It's in that. Look at that rule summary document.
Right, I saw it there, but I didn't see it in the rule book.
It's not. As with many other things.
Okay.
But it's been made very clear that that is the rule and that's the way that it should be applied.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, thank you.
Jim?
Yes.
Is that a clear and distinct possession? Because there's times where, like, and I've had where the coach calls the timeout to save the goalie, but what if it's in my discretion that it's not really his possession?
It is your discretion, Todd. Yeah, if neither team has, because that's a pretty common trick where a coach will call, if neither team has possession, then we don't have the option to ignore a request for a timeout. You got to recognize it one way or the other.
Becomes a pretty gray area, doesn't it?
One of many in this sport, my friend. Yeah. Are you talking about the possession or not?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's coach feels it's his possession, then they get penalized and loses his timeout.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Well, then maybe I wait till I have the ball for sure.
What about using timeouts as a tactic? Like at a game where the time was winding down, the defending coach coach on defense, is calling timeout on purpose to hopefully get a penalty that they shoot and miss so we can get another possession. Is that, you still have to call that timeout?
You still have to call that timeout, but remember in the final minute, the team that's offended now has the option to take that penalty or just to keep possession of the ball. And if you feel that that calling of the timeout is not in the spirit of the game, red card? Sure. Especially if it's like the second one in a particular sequence. Overtime, lack thereof, yes. Get away, no more overtime ever, ever, ever. Okay, straight to shootout for these games. Now, again, maybe modified for an event. Maybe they'll go to golden goal. Maybe they'll leave it a tie, whatever. Make sure that you know in your particular tournament what the overtime set is. But as a rule, the 2-3 periods are gone. Everything, if it requires a result, goes straight to shootout. That's a pretty simple one. Bless you. I like this one. Free throws and how you defend them. The word immediately was put in the rule book instead of without undue delay, kind of an upgrade. No messing around. Once I get my hand on the ball, there's no more looking back at the cage, there's no more looking to see who my open player is. Once I get a hand on the ball, I gotta put the ball in play immediately, okay? No without undue delay anymore. Now, of course, if it's a hard foul on the perimeter, we're still going to give the offensive players some time to regain their bearings, especially if it's been a pretty hard foul to get up and get to the ball, especially if you should call an exclusion.
After you call it exclusion.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the hard foul.
yeah.
Can they look at the cage first or no?
Not, once I get my hand on the ball, I got to go.
Before they put it
So
on?
as I'm swimming out to the ball, if I want to take a look back, sure.
What if the ball's right here and I look to the cage and then I put my hand on the
I
ball?
think you better be moving to the ball while you look. Okay. Okay, no trickery. Now, the part I like is the defender. Takes a little bit of the gray area away from us. The defender, the rule book clearly says, in order to raise a hand or move that hand, that's the question that gets asked a lot, I gotta move away. There is no distance in the rule book, but we're using 1 meter as kind of a guideline. As a referee, I want to see the defender show me that they're making an effort to back away before they raise a hand. Okay? Still behind the head, still move away. I'm a meter away from Todd. I can move or whatever as long as I don't move forward and interfere with the ball before it leaves the passer or shooter's hand. E?
They don't raise their hand. They've made the foul.
And stay put.
They just stay put, or they're just barely moving. But they
Question
don't
is
put
for
any hand up.
those of you that are on the phone here, if the defender chooses to stay put in their position, they may not raise a hand. They don't have to move. The rule just says they have to move to raise a hand.
Okay.
But as a referee, I'm making darn sure that those hands are not in a suit and then they let go. I think coaches are, what I've seen, the coaches are teaching the kids to back away. Yeah. The good coaches, right, Nick? Yeah. Okay. And again, consistency. If you do it the same all the time, you'll be fine. Wasting time, and let's please not spend so much time on this. This is not a change, well, it is a change from the way it's been the last few years, but we're going back a few years to the way it used to be. FINA, I think it was 09, Stephen, am I correct? In
09,
Rome, where they get
New
away with
Zealand.
the stalling rule, and then watched a few games of the goalie sitting on the ball or no movement at all. Well, boy, this isn't exactly what we had in mind. So now we're back to the offense must make some effort to continue to play. They throw the example of the goalie being the only player on the attacking team in the defensive half, and I pass the ball back to that goalie. That's meant to be an example of abandoning play, refusing to continue to play the game. If I've got 2 or 3 of my teammates in the backcourt with me, the goalie can certainly become part of that passing sequence. Okay? And again, as long as you stay consistent, and it's the same at the beginning of the game as it is in the last 30 seconds, you're fine.
How about this scenario? The team has progressed beyond half with the field players trying to play offense you're getting pressed and can't do anything with the ball, a player goes back to their side, the defensive side, and crosses out.
If that's the only, yeah, if that's the only open player and they're back, yeah, sure.
So that's
Why
not
not?
considered wasting time. That's
I'm still playing offense. I'm passing to my teammate who's open.
cool. Thank you.
I had what happened to me back 8 years ago when we had this. I down by 2 goals with a man up, call a timeout, put the ball in play with a field player. I said, if they press out, throw the ball to the goalie. If they don't, then go ahead and pass it up. If they press out, I throw the ball to the goalie. He calls stalling on me. And I'm like, how can I stall? I'm down by 2 goals.
That might have been a
22nd minute.
questionable application.
So that would
That
be,
happens.
and that's what I said, your interpretation was
Right.
fair to me. We are, that wouldn't be stalling, just
No.
passing it up.
It has to be intent to stall.
Right.
Well, that's what I said, well, why would I stall when I'm down by 2 goals with a 22nd advantage?
And
This is goal difference. It's just playing on goal
what
differential.
To what Nick said, intent to stall, and then pair that with intent to abandon offense. I'm not gonna play
I
anymore.
just leave the ball
I'm
out.
done. I'm sitting on the ball and doing whatever. Yeah, didn't play, swim.
I got one. Goalie starts with the ball, all 6 attacking players move up. Goalie has the ball, but he progresses slowly.
Sure,
There's no more.
why not? I'm moving, yeah. Thank you for that. Simulation. It's a foul to simulate being fouled. The best example I can think of is an offensive player driving, and even though my defender may have peeled off and they're a meter or 2 away from me now, I simulate being pulled back. That's my foul. That's a foul on me. If I'm on offense, it's a contra foul and a turnover. Okay? If I'm a defender guarding 2 meters or center, and I simulate being head-butted, that's my foul. That's an exclusion. See ya. Okay? If that continues, because simulation is not in the spirit of the game, it's unsporting play, if it continues, the referee may issue a yellow card like you would in interval time for unsporting play or whatever. I'm not going to tolerate that behavior now. That's a warning to everybody. Knock it off. Next time will be exclusion with substitution. Okay? Simulation.
Sorry,
I love the word.
Sorry to keep interrupting, you kind of lost me, I think I drifted off. You said you simulate the headbutt or with the headbutt?
Right, so I'm a defender, I'm a center defender, and I'm simulating a contra foul. It's a foul on me, and our only option at that point, ordinary foul does nothing, so exclusion.
How about a rear back on the job?
How's that simulation? The RB under
Simulating
line
the
was
as
question.
a fullback of some sort?
Yeah,
So as
Correct.
long
So that
as
would
the
be a foul.
defender is close to that player's back, a rear back would be viewed as a.
if you, as the referee, feel that there's no way in the world they're being held or
Too far
impeded,
away.
then yeah, turn it over. No, simulation. Okay, here we go. This is a big one. And it's really, really not that difficult, okay? And as I said here, it's still open for continued interpretation, and it will be, once we see a few games internationally, and our national team is back on our soil, an exhibition series of Serbia coming up, and some other stuff, we'll get a better sense, and maybe Stephen or Amber can chime in on this, because I know they're in communication with people that are refereeing around the world. But the intent is, and we'll skip ahead a little bit to the advantage rule. It's been made very, very clear in the advantage rule that the referee is to favor the offense, period, all of the things being equal. So, to that end, I have gained possession of the ball. My team is in transition on counterattack. Any foul committed by the defense, especially in the backcourt, they use the backcourt, the defensive end, as an example, based on the theory that once everybody gets to the front court, we're not in transition anymore. We're in a front court static offense. Okay, so that's where the reference to the backcourt comes in. But what you need to know as referees is any foul, once a team is in transition and moving, tactical foul, let's call it, by the defense to slow down the offense, to give my teammates a chance to cover up, those should be exclusion fouls. And yes, it can include chasing the goalie after the team is on offense and has gained that transition status.
If the
Okay.
goalie has possession
A
of the ball.
foul and drop on the wing out with absolutely no other option than to just take the player out and then drop back on defense. That's a tactical foul to slow the offense down. That defender needs to be excluded under this interpretation, these rules. The initial foul, and I'll thank my friend Amber for this terminology, the initial foul that simply establishes possession, no. Rebound. Initial foul of the goalie before the goalie gets possession and everybody's still in the front court trying to figure out who's going to get the ball. That first foul, ordinary. Now, once we're in transition and moving, that's when this stuff comes into play. PR.
You have a player on offense that loses possession, defense steals the ball. Player gets upset, the ball's being stolen from him. Hard foul, doesn't sink the player, hard foul to try to get the ball back. While the team is now in transition, so it's like real quick.
Yeah, so we're not in transition anymore because the ball's been stolen
The
from me.
ball's
So
been
who cares what
stolen,
my
now
teammates
we're
are
going
doing?
the
It's
other
not our
way.
ball anymore.
And I've lost the ball, and he's taken off, but I want to foul this player real quick, try to
You
get
demonstrated it twice just perfectly. I fouled this player to try to get the ball back, excluded.
Right.
I, I'm holding, I'm sinking, I'm pulling back. Two hands.
Doesn't have to
Steven?
Can you make sure you repeat the questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are you listening on the phone? You can't hear? I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
So
The question was, for those of you that were listening, if we're in transition and the ball is stolen from me, and now I go and commit a hard foul to the person that just stole the ball in an effort to stall him or try to get the ball back, that now is an exclusion based on the fact that it's a heavy foul, two hands, not playing
What
the
if it's
ball.
not a heavy foul? What if I steal the ball from you, my team's transitioning, you come and foul me, just an ordinary foul?
Yeah.
That would be a kick out.
Ordinary fouls can still exist. If I'm holding the ball and I'm trying to play offense, and then I lose possession for a second while I'm trying to play, and the defender's still on me impeding, then sure, ordinary. If the defender stays and impedes my free motion from that point forward, then exclude it. Same as it applies to any front court offense on the perimeter.
The ball is stolen, they're counterattacking, and they're flying past the other team. And you know that they're gonna have the advantage. Are you still gonna call the exclusion and give away if they're halfway down the pool? And you,
That's a great question, and for those of you that can't hear the questions, if a team is in possession of the ball and on counterattacking, correct me if I'm not paraphrasing your question correctly, am I gonna call that exclusion or that foul and perhaps move the ball backwards? No. Advantage. I'm not gonna take away an established advantage because of the foul. Just like anytime, we still try never to move the ball backwards. So, to that end, that's a great question.
You say chasing the goalie is the exclusion or fouling the goalie?
Chasing and fouling. Thank you,
What
Sergio.
if you just take 3 strokes, change your mind, and come back, and then there's no contact?
There's no foul, there's no contact, yeah.
More contact.
Yeah, it's gotta be a foul.
Could still press in the backward, but not foul.
And not foul, sure. Sure. The question was, can we still press in the backcourt, not foul? Of course. Good pressing defense, but a good offense is gonna get out of that press and make you impede and probably get you excluded anyway. Yes, sir.
So,
Mr. Babbitt.
also in the new rules, you mentioned about this, it's kind of, I call it an incidental foul, where the person's holding the ball and they're putting pressure on him, and then they try to steal it, and then they hit it out, and then they don't get off in time, that's kind of an incidental foul. That's okay versus somebody getting fouled with one hand or two during the transition when they're not holding the ball, which is an exclusion. So you can press, and what I read was if it's holding the ball and then they hits it out of their hand, which isn't a foul yet, but they don't get off in time, it's impeding, that could be an ordinary foul. So that's what he's talking about, can be an ordinary foul.
Okay, cool.
Right.
So you can't have an ordinary foul. In transition.
That's the exception.
If it's after the person was holding the ball and it came out, that's what the literature said, right?
I think we're in dangerous ground, though. For those of you that can't hear all the questions, we went back and forth to, yes, there can indeed still be ordinary fouls. I can press an offensive player if they're holding the ball, but as soon as they let go of the ball and try to play offense, I better get off. If I don't get off right away, a quick ordinary foul to establish possession, no problem. Same situation at center. And then the question came up, well then, so we can have ordinary fouls in transition. Yes, in that situation, but if the offense continues to play and move and I'm still impeding, then no, exclusion.
So we're talking fouls to really.
Tactical foul to slow the offense.
Foul and drop. Gotcha.
Foul and drop in the common vernacular. This is nothing new. Impeding and two-hand exclusions, those have always been exclusion fouls. But we haven't done, honestly, a very good job of calling them. If I'm a defender and I'm holding the offensive player on the perimeter to prevent them from getting to a pass, should that be an exclusion? You bet. Have we called it an ordinary foul 90% of the time? Yeah, we have. There's got to be exclusions. And here's where one of my favorite things I love to talk to referees about during game, in addition to initiation of contact and why weren't you on time and all that other stuff, is show me, signal. Some of you have been around long enough to remember where we had like a silly aluminum pole or wood for some of us with colored flags on each end to signal possession, who had the ball. They took those out of our hands so we could demonstrate to the players, to the fans, to everybody else what the heck we're doing, okay? I call a contra foul because you pushed off in somebody's face. Tweet, I call that contra foul and I show. If I'm calling a holding foul on the perimeter, show me. That's all you gotta do. There's a lot of coaches in the room, a lot of referees that used to be coaches, a lot of you that do both. If you're a coach and you don't understand a call, even though we all know the best seat in the house is the coach's chair at the other end. Sometimes you can't always see everything, and isn't it nice if the referee just shows you what they call it? Hey, a contra foul on my center, what the heck did he do? And then you show, or around the neck, or whatever. Please, signal, especially away from the ball. Kind of went off on a little tangent. But here's the thing that Nick talked about at the bottom. Lose possession of the ball, the defender can't get off immediately, yeah, quick ordinary foul, impeding. Okay? Don't be confused by the fact, when you look at the rule book, page by page and letter by letter, that there is no ordinary fouls for impeding. They are all shifted over to exclusion. Okay? You still have an ordinary foul.
Locking
We
on
need to come up
2 meters is
with-
okay, because it's not a 2-handed foul. We just want to-
Now, where's that coming from? Every coach is
We
yelling.
were talking about that, yeah.
We'll get to that.
Jim,
It's a good one.
is there a signal for if you call a foul for simulation?
The yellow card.
Well, no, you
How
said
about
the beginning
this?
of down, right?
It's this one, the cuckoo.
The question was, is there a signal for simulation? I do not believe there is in that couple of pages. So maybe you need to just, no, signal, maybe a yellow card. That will be your signal.
Jim, I hate to go back, I have, because I feel like something got muddled up here. On the transition
Yes.
fouls.
I was kind of surprised we got through that so quick, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to take it back.
No, it's probably one of the most important things.
If the goalie makes the long release to the deep five, to the deep spot 5, and you're up coming out of 2 meters in transition, your center defender's up, and that man's being pressed at the 5 spot. If he's good up to make that pass to the open player, and you've got a 2-on-1 coming out of the backcourt, even if is it an exclusion, even if it's a foul that isn't necessarily a tactical foul and drop, but isn't that foul still, as we were talking about, all fouls are kind of tactical in a way, but,
Sure.
and I get that, is that going to be an exclusion or not? Because if the kid's trying to make the pass to the open player, he gets fouled, maybe it wasn't on purpose, or it wasn't a 2-handed sink foul, but it was a foul
I
nevertheless.
think if that player with the ball is still in the backcourt, yes.
But where the ball's down, like, we made the long
On the
pass.
offensive end.
Then I think ordinary foul.
Fair enough, that's what I mean, so.
My FINA referees,
I agree.
thank you.
So, in reality, then,
Double exclusions, fantastic behavior modification tool, don't you think? I got two players that aren't necessarily playing the game anymore, they're kind of focused on each other. Sometimes as referees, we didn't want to make that call, especially near the end of the possession clock, because what happens? The offense gets a brand new possession. You haven't done anything with the ball for 25 seconds. I've got two players locked up on each other. I want them both out of the game, but I really don't want to give you a brand new possession clock. Now I don't have to. Beauty. As long as one team has possession of the ball, I make double exclusion, ball out. We all know the mechanics haven't changed, okay? You're out, ball back in, no reset, okay? Big change, I like it. And I think the NC2A, where's my friend Dr. Corbin?
Here.
Yes, we did.
Cool. I think NC2A is going to go the same way. It's good. Yes, Nick?
Keep in mind, the timing systems are, some of them are set up so if you actually use the exclusion feature, it will reset the clock. So some of them you can do an under reset, but before they do that, make sure you know what the clock was at before they reset it, because it's gonna reset. So while the ball was out, just verify that the shot clock didn't get reset, because it can happen automatically on certain timing systems.
Fantastic point. So for those of you who can't hear, Mr. Faba made the comment that many of our timing consoles are automatically set up to reset the possession clock if you enter an exclusion on that console. So you as a referee need to be aware of that when you go to a particular venue. Most of the newer systems now have an undo reset button that you just need to tell the people what's going on with that. Okay. If neither team has possession and we're fighting for the ball, still reset, just like any other no possession thing, like any other neutral throw. Exclusions inside 5 meters. Here we go. TWPC, the people that set these rules felt that, and I feel that, in fact, if you've refereed a game and you've had me perhaps as your evaluator, I'm not really a big fan of exclusions of center away from the ball. 2 reasons. One, I want to see the center try to play offense, and boy, oh boy, was that the easiest goal in the world. You'll hear the coaches will say, hey, when you hear that exclusion whistle, on that first whistle, you dump the ball into center because they're going to be open, and we're either going to get interference or we're going to have a quick shot with no guard. Too much. Bigger advantage than a penalty. So, referees are being instructed now, especially away from the ball. Ball's on the perimeter, maybe at the point, getting ready to be passed in. Really heavy defense at center. I don't like as attack referee. So number 5 is out. This hand, I am signaling, wait a second, I'm slowing you down a little bit till everybody knows who's out. Number 5, out to the table, out. Now you may play. Okay? Makes sense? Applies mostly to when the ball is away from the foul. If the ball is at the foul, why we're calling exclusions on a player with the ball inside the 5 instead of a penalty, that's a whole different story. But if you do call exclusion, a good friend of mine who happens to live in Slovenia said, Jim, don't confuse it. It's been the same for 25 years. Make sure the exclusion is clear and continue play. So at the ball, maybe we still make sure it's clear, but we speed it up a little bit. I think this is the challenge for you as referees, to develop your mechanics, and I think that we're all going to get a little bit smoother and a little bit quicker with that process to not totally kill the offense, but to slow it down enough so it doesn't become the huge advantage, a bigger advantage than a penalty shot. Makes sense? Stephen, Amber, anything to add? Dr. Korb?
So I have a question. Do you think the intent of this was that it would make it more likely that the referee would make that call because there won't be that huge advantage?
Yeah.
What was the intent behind doing that?
The question was, do we think that the intent behind this rule change was to encourage the referees to make those calls? I think so, yes. I think that referees were letting the center play get way too heavy away from the ball and not calling an exclusion because they didn't want to give that big advantage. Now I don't have to. Now I can exclude, you're out, play on. Bert.
No whistle to put the ball back in play after you stop him?
Doesn't say that anywhere in the rules, it's a little bit unclear. I will call on my working FINA referees to, I hear more people saying no whistle than those that say, yes, please, use whistle. Johnny Lonzi, who is chairman of the TWPC, was here in December. He was very adamant about using the whistle. Whether the referees actually use it in the games or not, I do not know. To me, it's kind of like the corner throw, ball's out of bounds, now you're in play, put it in play, and if that player's a little bit uncertain as to whether they're clear to start, then I'll blow my whistle. Okay, you may play. I would apply the same principle there for now. Herb. Steven?
I use a whistle. I do use a whistle to put the ball back live just because then I do it for everything. So, I mean, to me, if the ball is coming out of the pool at any time, and it goes back in, the referee's always blowing the whistle there. In this particular sequence, talking with Mr. Krikorian as well, and then women's senior team coach, he prefers the whistle because it's a clear signal that the referee has now deemed the ball to be back live. I think that we're going to get caught in some gray area that, you know, especially with the younger age groups where they're not ready and the referee just goes and, you know, throws a hand up and says the ball's live. Well, what really does that constitute then, and who is watching at that point? Probably the person with the ball, but that might be it. I think it also sends a signal to your partner as well when you're working on a game that you deem the ball to be live, and I don't know, it's in my practice to use a whistle. I know that there are a lot of people not doing it, but right now I'm using it, it seems to work better.
The conversation that we're having, for those of you that are listening in and not in the room, is about using a whistle or not. And the statement's been made that some referees prefer to use the whistle and in fact make a habit of it, which I'm totally fine with. It just, I'm uncomfortable mandating it because it's not there. I think for this point, what you're comfortable with. If you feel there's some confusion, especially in the younger age groups, then by all means. I mean, sometimes in the younger age groups, we have to blow our whistle and start play all the time. Because they don't know, they're not ready. Mr. Coleman.
I was actually going with Bob's mention about cutting fouls away from the ball at center position, and if this rule should help maybe increase if you feel like it's necessary. Is that going to apply to drives as well, or is that just more for the center?
Any exclusion away from the ball, but the language